Automatic movements, why do we love them so much? I think it's kind of like cars, cars that have different engines, and obviously we are interested in those engines, especially if we're interested in that car, unless you are not into cars. But if you are into watches, you're definitely into the movements as well. It's definitely part of the whole allure of a watch. Automatic watches are probably, arguably, the most popular, I think, out of all the different types of movements that are available to collectors. And there are an extremely different amount of grades that are available, so finishes and qualities and things like that. So in this video, I just wanted to go through some of the movements that I have in my collection, going from an 8S, which we are looking at right now, from Miyota. This is one of their least expensive movements. It's an automatic movement. It is made in Japan. However, it is a very affordable movement. That's because obviously it's not finished very well. It's not a very good looking movement to look at. You could see the actual rotor itself has sort of uneven finishing on it. There are striping on it, but the stripes are actually machine placed. So you could see big scratches basically throughout the whole entire movement. It doesn't look very good. It's sort of like a Bauhaus finishing. They try and go a little bit industrial on it, but it doesn't look good. Now, the next movement that I have here is the NH35. So the NH35 obviously is another version of an affordable movement from a different manufacturer. This is made by Seiko. This is the NH35, and you can see, again, the finishing on here, all done by machine. The rotor is sort of unadorned. Again, the same thing with that 8S. A lot of them do not have any sort of anything on the rotors, really. A lot of manufacturers don't even bother to put anything on top of them. Sometimes they glue on top of the rotor itself or screw into the rotor itself a plate just to make it look a little bit different. But the moment you see an NH35, you'll immediately recognize it because it always looks very, very simple, very, very plain. Not bad movements. Both of these are very, very good workhorse movements. But as you move up the ladder a little bit, and here we have a watch that actually, so those two watches were in my collection. Obviously, I had the Tax, and then there was the DIY watch that I just recently put together. This is Relio. This is actually a 9039 from Miyota, and you could see this gets a little bit nicer of finishing, but again, this is actually machine finish. You can see the bridges on here are brushed a little bit nicer. They actually went a little bit further to brush these a little bit nicer than the 8 series, but you could see it's still not the most pretty movement, but it is a lot better looking. One problem with these, and you'll notice this if you get into watches or if you are into watches, the rotor itself is always the same. It looks the same. You could put a little bit of a 3D sort of printing on there. That's what they did here. This is Relio. They put their logo on there. Looks good. I don't think it looks bad. But again, it's something that you're going to see very, very often. Next on my hit list, I have, this is Wehrenbach. Wehrenbach makes some really cool watches. They use STP movements. I think they're going to be moving away from using STP movements. These are made by Fossil Group. This is not their top grade. Their top grade would actually have more blued screws, I believe. This is somewhere in between. This is probably their elaborate movement. As you can see, there is some blued and there's some steel screws there. There is some nice finishing on here. Some of this is done by machine. Some of this is done by hand. A majority of it is done by machine on this movement. And this is an ETA clone. And we'll look at some ETA movements, but I'm trying to go in order of actual succession of what is more expensive. So these are more affordable than your ETA movements, but on the less affordable side, as affordable movements go, definitely you want to go Japanese if you want to get a very affordable movement. The next would be Sellita. Sellita make a very, very good movement, and it is also a ETA clone, and you can see this is basically unfinished. There really is no finishing on this whatsoever. You have all steel screws. There's a couple of blued screws here and there. But again, this is my seaplane from Foreign Swit. This is sort of an off-the-shelf movement that is completely unfinished. They actually do put custom rotors. You can put a custom rotor on these. You can put a custom rotor on pretty much anything that you want, any movement that you want, but this does not have a custom rotor. A good looking movement still, no matter what. Even though it's unfinished, the metal finishing itself is good. It was done well by machine, so it does look good. So next we have an ETA 2826. So this is essentially the movement we just looked at. It's a 2824 or 2826. I don't remember. I think it's a 24. This has a custom rotor, as I mentioned. This is Seiko Craft. And this is the Grand Mare. So you can see this is a Nautilus on here. It's finished. So you can replace the actual rotors with your own custom rotor. So a lot of brands do that. However, you can see the movement itself is still the same, not finished. And it's all machine done. So kind of interesting though. But now let's look at a high-grade ETA movement. Now this is an actual high-grade ETA movement that Joux-Perret uses. And this is the 2894. Now, there is a lot of hand finishing here. And that is mainly on the plates. I believe the rotor is actually not hand finished. You're not getting beveled edges or anything like that, but it does look good. This looks really good compared to what we were just looking at. This would technically be a top grade movement from ETA. These are not cheap. This is a 2894, so this is a chronograph version of the 2892. And it's just a good looking movement. No matter what, these are very good looking. So the 2892 is the higher grade of the movements essentially that we just looked at. Now, there are some other chronograph movements that are affordable. So we have, now this is a non-automatic, and I'm just wanting to show you, this is a Seagull. And when you look at it this close, you could see the machine finishing not that good. But there are chronograph movements out there that are affordable. However, like I said, if you get really close to them, you're not going to like the finishing that you see. And you can see that's all machine finished. Now, moving into some really, I would say, more higher end movements here. This is a Lemania movement from Omega. This is the one in my Speedmaster Mark II. And you could see, now we're talking about some, again, a lot of just unfinished parts here, but they're finished to a level that they are somewhat hand finished, probably for certain parts, but they're not completely hand finished. Like all of the sort of pinkish, goldish color movement parts are probably finished off by hand, but none of the other pieces are. So there's a few little areas that are finished, but not very many. Great looking movement though, very, very fun to look at. Later versions get more finishing than that does. So now moving up the ladder again, we're still in the ETA group though, and this is the coaxial 8500 from ETA. And now again, another machine finished movement. However, you're getting a little bit nicer and a little bit nicer and a little bit nicer and a little bit nicer to the point where this is so nice that it really doesn't matter that it's machine finished. This looks cool. You get that black, you get black elements in the actual movement itself, and then you have blued screws and a lot of really beautiful finishing on the actual plates and rotor, and they're sort of it's sort of spiraling and radiating out of the center of the movement itself. Really gorgeous, just beautiful. And a reliable movement. It's 8500, so it has a lot of resistance to magnification. A very interesting movement, another movement that is, I believe, finished by machine, and it has a spiral sort of finish on it. This is a GMT movement from Eterna in-house. And really, this is the first in-house movement that we're looking at. All the movements that we've looked at so far are not in-house movements. They are sourced movements. So including that Omega, the Omega 8500 is really made by ETA. It's technically in-house for ETA because it is made by the ETA group for Omega specifically. But this is a GMT movement made by Eterna. These are actually really good looking movements. They're kind of large on the larger side, as you can see. Their diameter is somewhat modern. Very, very good looking movements. A little bit on the plain side, but I really like this circular finishing that they do. Of course, no beveled edges and mostly machine finish. So moving into some of the more higher end watches that we have on this table. This is a Panerai, and it is darkened and finished in a dark sort of color. This is hand finished. However, it's a very Bauhaus looking movement. As you could see, what they've done here is they've beveled some of the edges, but this is all finished in one direction, sort of unidirectional brushing on the entire movement, the rotor and the plates. You could see in the movement itself right there, that is the column wheel. I'll just catch it with the light because it is dark and it's hard to see. This is the 9100. You can see a couple little beveled edges there. The screws are all in stainless steel. They don't actually blue them, but I believe there might be a couple of blued screws here. They do that just to keep with the look of this whole entire movement and how it plays with the light. It actually plays very nicely with the light compared to a lot of other movements. Now, actually, what I think is a very high-end movement, but is very, very often overlooked, and it has beautiful circular finishing on it. This is the Zenith Elite. I think has better finishing than the El Primero, and it's an ultra-thin caliber. And you could see this is just really a nice movement, and it looks so beautiful. And this does not have any beveled edges either. It's just sort of, it could be partially machine finished. I'm not sure if this is finished by hand. This is their Elite, so I believe it might be finished by hand. You get that circular finishing. It just looks really, really cool. So now we're really starting to move upscale. And the next watch here is sort of in between, I would say. Yes, this is a Ralph Lauren, but you can see there it says RL7. I can move this a little bit. 750. Now, this RL750, those of you who don't know, is actually made by Jaeger-LeCoultre. So this is a JLC RL750, really. It's just not finished to the same standard that they would finish it for their own watches. However, they don't skimp on the finishing. This is finished by hand. You do get striping on it, but there is no beveled edges. It is a column wheel chronograph. There's the column wheel right there, so you do get to see it. Beautiful movement, actually. It's really nice to look at. And it is a very high quality and very, very well made movement. Sorry, moving around a lot here. No blued screws. You have some perlage on the bottom plates there. The Geneva striping looks really crisp, really, really crisp. Just a bright movement, too. The metal on here, just the way they finished it, it looks very, very, very bright. Now, moving into a really cool movement. This is made by Citizen, actually. This is Le Joux-Perret. And honestly, I think this is probably one of the better high-end movements that I own in my collection. And this is the caliber MM01 from Marmoussy, which is a brand that I actually represent. But and I'm not saying that because I represent the brand. I'm saying that because you can see with your own eyes that Le Joux-Perret actually make some extremely high-end movements, and this is one of them. And you can see there is on that the whole entire movement itself is sort of darkened to match the color of the titanium of the case itself, but this is not titanium. It's made in stainless steel. It's engraved. The Marmoussy is engraved. The bridges are engraved. You can see there the caliber MM01. Some of the wheels are even engraved. This is a really, really nice watch. A lot of this is done by machine. However, the quality of the finishing on this and the look of it and the size of this, you could see when I brought in the smaller Zenith, you could see how small the Zenith movement is compared to the Marmoussy. Now, that's really that's more of a modern thing because a lot of movements are becoming bigger because people want to see bigger movements. They want to see their movements through the case back, especially if they're spending a lot of money on a watch like this Marmoussy, which is not a cheap watch. You're going to spend $12,000 and you're getting this amazing movement. You want to see it. Here is an incredible movement. Now we're talking about haute horology. This gets beveled edges. This is all hand finished. This is a Roger Dubuis that is actually got, and you can see that's the Ponce de Genève right there, the seal of Geneva. That right there in the center of your screen, it's very hard to see. That is actually the seal of Geneva. That means that this is finished to a standard not only of the case, but the movement. Originally, it was just the movement. Now they apply that same finishing standard to the case itself. This is a micro rotor movement. It is an automatic movement. That's a 22 karat gold rotor, and it is spectacular. This was called the Homage, and obviously Roger Dubuis actually worked at Patek Philippe. During his time there, he actually was responsible for the high complications. He started his own brand. That was Roger Dubuis, and he wanted to do something a little bit avant-garde. But he took a lot of that watchmaking knowledge and the quality, the precision, and he brought it over to Roger Dubuis. Now, Roger Dubuis have this Ponce de Geneve. A lot of other brands do that. Those brands are very, very high-end brands, such as Vacheron, such as AP. Actually, maybe AP never did it. I think Patek Philippe did, and they stopped doing it. Chopard on their LUCs, they did it on a few of them. There are other brands that do it, but it costs a lot of money to do, and the actual requirements are very, very strict. As you can see, this is an impeccably finished movement for the price, especially when you're considering because these watches don't sell very well on the aftermarket. And here's another Roger Dubuis, and as you can see, a little bit of a theme with me. Let me focus this in. I have a thing for Roger Dubuis, especially their movements. I mean, look at this. Again, there's the seal of Geneva right there. Gold rotor on here as well. And you can see there's circular finishing on this. Just really, really a special movement. And it's just beautiful. It's just a beautiful movement. All hand finished, beveled edges, perfect. And you can see, like, you're not going to find this on lower end movements, but you're spending a lot of money on these watches to get them. Unfortunately, a lot of this is not available. When you are looking at movements or watches from brands like Seiko, they do this. They can do it, and they have the ability, but you can see the difference just by looking very quickly. There definitely is a big difference, and you're paying for that difference. So now we're going to move on to the next watch. The last watch that I have on the table, and actually I have one other watch I wanted to show you guys, which I didn't. I forgot to show you guys, and I'll go back to it. It's in the Etta family, but it is my Vacheron. I have two Vacheron. This is three Vacheron, excuse me. But I chose this one because it has the world time movement. It has a beautiful 22 karat rose gold, or excuse me, yellow gold rotor, but you could see the plates on here. The beveling is incredible. And it also has the seal of Geneva. So just like the Roger Dubuis, it meets those standards for case and for movement. But look at how beautiful this movement is. The finishing on here is insane. And when you get to this level of watchmaking, of course, you're getting gold on the rotor. And everything is hand finished, everything is hand blued, everything is really beautifully finished. Any typing, any sort of engraving on the movement itself is perfect. It's flawless. You could look at this even closer than we are right now, and you would not be able to see any flaws whatsoever. So very quickly, as an honorable mention, I just wanted to show you a Valjoux 7750 because this is a very, very popular movement. Now, Valjoux 7750s go from very low end to very, very high end. Now, I say low end, but they're never really low end because they are automatic chronographs. They are made very well, but they are machine finished. You could put your own custom rotor on them, as this Christopher Ward has. However, they go all the way up where some brands actually add in a column wheel. So other brands other brands in the Etta group, like Longines and stuff like that, they add a column wheel into the actual movement. They finish all of the plates. They have different levels as well. So this could be a high-end movement, or it could be a lower-end movement, depending on how much work actually goes into the movement itself. So this one got a custom rotor, but that's pretty much it. So you can see there's no other really adornment done to the rest of the movement. Obviously, everything is machine finished as it was, as it just came out of the Valjoux sort of factory, the Etta factory. Anyway, I think this is a pretty interesting sort of topic. There are tons of movements, especially for people who are new to watchmaking. new to movements and you know why one movement is better than the other. It's very, very hard to tell that. And you could see there are tons of movements to choose from, different finish levels and things like that. So a lot of choices out there, and I just wanted to show you some of them. Anyway, tell me what you think of this video in the comments below. Tell me what you think of what I've said here. Hopefully you guys found it interesting and fun. Please also don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that bell icon. It's super helpful for the channel, and I very much appreciate it. Anyway, thank you for logging on. I'll catch you guys in the next video.